Hello and welcome back to Thoughts Per Episode Classic Doctor Who Edition. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, but as you may have been able to guess, the new series of Doctor Who has kind of put me in the mood for some of the old stuff as well. We last left off with Galaxy 4, which was an animated reconstruction of some missing episodes, which is apt because there are many more missing episodes in between here and there, and I know that there's ways to catch up with them. You can watch these like slideshow versions using photographs taken while filming and stuff like that, but honestly I would rather just jump to the next story, so we've got some stuff to catch up on before we get to today's episode. Firstly, no more Vicky. The crew visit the siege of Troy and hijinks ensue, and Vicky falls in love and runs away with a fella. And it's funny because I watched that, that Memory TARDIS thing, that Tales of a TARDIS show where they caught up with Vicky and Stephen, and we saw Vicky's life kind of in this ancient Greek world, but I just assumed it was some, far future off-world like alien planet that happened to be mimicking Greek culture. I didn't know she was literally from there and had made a life there. So long, Vicky. It was fun. Also, it seems like Vicky's replacement was originally going to be this Katerina character who stayed on into the next serial, the Daleks' Master Plan, but then plans were changed and Katerina didn't make it out of the Daleks' Master Plan, and instead we got Dodo. Not the last Dodo the Doctor will ever meet. That will happen in the novel The Last Dodo. Sorry, I can't resist a bit of wordplay. So in part 1, The Steel Sky, the TARDIS materializes in... I don't know why I said that so weirdly. It materializes in a jungle under a steel sky, hence the name. And the first thing we see is this weird cyclopean-looking creature, They kind of remind me of the human Dalek from Daleks in Manhattan. Is it Daleks in Manhattan? Daleks Take Manhattan? Angels Take Man... Oh, there's too many episodes in this goddamn show. You know, the one where the Dalek transfers himself into a human body and looks nothing like a human and goes, "I am a human Dalek." Anyway, they look a little bit like that. But they are not Daleks, they are called the Monoys, or the Monoids? I can't quite tell. I should start watching these with subtitles, actually. It'll probably make my life a lot easier. They seem to have this weird relationship with the humans, where the humans are like kind of seeking to appease them, and yet the Monoids don't seem to be necessarily threatening or aggressive. They seem to have this kind of cohabitual relationship that they are eager and anxious to serve. And so the Doctor, Stephen, and Dodo show up, and I'm struck by how different this TARDIS team is from the original TARDIS team that William Hartnell had. The Doctor, I don't know if this is intentional, but I view this first Doctor, this part of his life, as being almost quite lonely, as if he's like seeking replacements for the people that he initially enjoyed going out and seeing the universe with. But something I've noticed is that the crew are quite mean to Dodo. They keep like calling her stupid, and she seems very, maybe not ditzy, but she doesn't really think much. She kind of goes blundering into situations, and the Doctor yells at her for dressing weirdly, and he yells at her for talking weirdly because she's got all this young, cool, hip lingo. When she sees this machine in action, she says, "Oh, that's gear." Was that a thing back in the 60s? Were things gear? Or is that just some sci-fi lingo that they invented up? Because I don't know when Dodo actually comes from. She certainly doesn't seem to have quite grasped her situation in terms of their travelling through time and space just yet, and it did remind me of one of the previous episodes I saw where Vicky was kind of... No, it wasn't Vicky, it was Stephen. Stephen was the one not quite believing. This was in the Mad Monk serial. Stephen wasn't quite believing that they were travelling through time and space, and Vicky was trying to convince him, so now the shoe is on the other foot. How does it feel, Stephen? You big doofus. I don't know. The reason why I think that the relationship between humans and the Monoids is strained in favour of the Monoids, as in like the humans are seeking to appease them, is this trial where this engineer, I guess, who neglected his duties or missed something or got something wrong, is sentenced to miniaturization, and he will not be unminiaturized, I guess, for another 700 years. And this is seen as quite a harsh sentence, I agree. But the leader of these people is like, we're the guardians of humanity. We have to hold ourselves to a high standard. And at first, during this scene, I thought they were just trying to appease the Monoids because they were kind of like looking to the Monoids and being like, are you okay with this sentence? And they were like, yeah, we're okay with this sentence. Because that's how they sound, that's how they speak, not at all, I'm lying. But now, having learned a little bit more towards the end of this episode, I believe it's just because they're like, we can't get this shit wrong. We've got millions of people on board, all miniaturized, which is something we learn later. They have cabinets full of people who've been miniaturized because they are fleeing Earth before it gets swallowed up by the sun, which is fun because it makes me think of the End of the World episode 2 of New Who, where the Doctor takes Rose to see that exact event taking place. I know there's not really like an established canon timeline of events in the Who-niverse, but it is fun to kind of like link those events together and just be like, oh, over here they're doing this, and over there that version of them is doing that. It also reminds me of Amy Pond's second episode with the Star Whale, where the Doctor's talking about how people were fleeing Earth. I don't think it was around this time period, but Earth had become uninhabitable or something, and there were these great arc ships, and that might honestly have been a direct reference to this one. So maybe it was around the same time. I don't really know. I'm just pointing at familiar things and similar things and going, oh, look, this is a bit like that. You can't see me, but I was pointing. I was gesticulating. But yeah, we're told that we are so far in the future that they literally measure time in segments, and everything we know and have projected into the future is all part of the first segment. They talk about, oh, well, yeah, you know, the Battle of Troy and all that, and the Daleks invading Earth, that was all part of the first segment. We're in the 57th segment, which is like 10 million years in the future. I don't know how that math works out, but it's there. And it's fun to get a super far future storyline. They talk about how they are on the way to the planet Refusus, which is the only planet with the right temperament for human habitation, which I find kind of funny because I feel like in the Doctor Who universe we see many planets which are ripe for human habitation, and here they are in the far future. So did something happen to all of those planets? Maybe this is post-Flux when most of the universe has been destroyed. I'm joking, it's fine. We don't have to talk about that. To talk about the episode itself instead of how it could possibly link into future Doctor Who bits of lore which were never considering this specific episode. Yeah, I think this was a really fun introduction to this specific scenario that we've been set up with in this serial. What a sibilant sentence. Obviously the climax of this episode is that Dodo's cold that she's been talking about having ends up spreading to the crew and ends up killing one of the Monoids, and we're going to see how that shakes up the whole cohabitation thing and assigning blame, and even the Doctor is like, oh my god, this was my fault, I didn't even think about this happening. And this is something I have considered happening before. Like, why wouldn't there be more instances of the TARDIS crew spreading common diseases that, you know, other generations in these other timelines haven't been introduced to and end up making it a big deal, or vice versa? I wonder if there'll be an explanation at the end of this episode where the Doctor's like, I'm gonna set up a filter in the TARDIS that sorts out this kind of thing, but let's be real, probably not. Right, on to episode 2. Part 2, The Plague. In this episode, the Doctor and crew are in danger of being sentenced to death for their crimes of bringing a common cold aboard the Ark and infecting everyone and almost killing them. And the Doctor has to try and convince them to let him formulate a cure for them all, otherwise they will go extinct. But fear is ruling, and the man Zentos, who has taken charge, very much just wants to throw them out of the airlock. Luckily, the commander is still lucid enough to forestall this and allow the Doctor to cure them all. And by the end of the episode, they are all cured, and the TARDIS crew up and leave, and it seems like this is going to be a two-parter, which is fascinating, because it's not. It's a four-parter, and we see at the very end of the episode, the TARDIS doesn't go anywhere, it just lands back in the ship in the future when they have finished the statue. I find this concept really exciting, this, like, story of two halves, where the first half takes place in what would end up being the past compared to the later half, and we're going to see if maybe, my theory is the Doctor's cure might have some long-term effects. That being said, They did finish the statue, so maybe not. Maybe they're all fine. But there was that moment where they saw this meteor flying by and they're like, oh, look, the moment is here. And there's clearly more story to be told regarding the humans and their relationship with the aliens they have on board and how their trip to Refusus is going to go, especially since some of the more suspicious people allege that the TARDIS crew are agents from Refusus sent to sabotage them, which makes me think that they know that they won't be welcome on the planet that they're trying to reach. Part of me was really hoping that they would get sentenced to miniaturization, and they would be miniaturized for 700 years, and then they would be deminiaturized, and then we would, the TARDIS would still be there, it would be fine, and then that would be how they travel into the future. Maybe that would have been an idea in an earlier version of this script, but they kind of reached the same thing anyway. But yeah, there's not really much to say about this episode. They cure the plague. They escape being thrown out of an airlock despite the plague actually killing a few people. They don't really have to answer for that. And they leave, and then they land again in the future, so I guess we'll see what awaits them there. Episode 3, The Return. The TARDIS crew land back on the same arc that they left, but it's hundreds of years in the future, and things are slightly different now. Whereas before, the Monoids were living in peace with the humans, and it was always kind of a relationship that was framed positively. Like, you could tell that the humans cared about what the Monoids wanted. They weren't necessarily a subservient race. It appears that now in the intervening time period, they have overthrown the humans, made the humans their slaves, and are now very angry about their time as this subservient race. So maybe things changed before, because they said the revolution was recent, right? So maybe things changed in the years after the TARDIS crew left, or maybe I'm putting too much thought into this, and it's not that important. But yes, as we can see, the statue that was being made in the first 2 episodes now has the head of a monoid, which is not what was supposed to happen. The TARDIS crew inevitably become imprisoned by the monoids, because can we ever have an episode of Doctor Who where the TARDIS crew are not being imprisoned by someone? I enjoyed the detail that I suspected would grow, where they say that the Doctor cured the initial plague of the previous episode, but it mutated and a fever developed which sapped the will of the humans, allowing for the Monoid takeover to become possible. Therefore, everything that is currently occurring is still kind of the fault of the TARDIS crew. We are introduced to the surviving humans, who see the TARDIS crew as legends out of myth, because they existed so many hundreds of years ago, and stories of them have been passed down. And apparently they named the Ark, because when they landed, the Doctor was like, oh, it's an Ark ship, obviously. And I guess that caught on, and the ship became called the Ark. I love these little details in storytelling, these little superfluous details which aren't necessarily important, but just add little bits of character to the background world building. Naturally, we have a scene where one of the Monoids comes into the prison room and is pointing a gun at everyone, and then there's a staged attempt to overcome him and steal his weapon, and it fails, and he kills someone, and it shows just how ruthless they are, and there are consequences for rebellious actions. And I feel like when they write Doctor Who scripts back in the day, they would have a template, and this would be one of the things you would have to include. I'm not being serious. I just think that this is a time-honoured tradition in Doctor Who at this point. I wonder if they ever get away from the whole people constantly being taken prisoner thing. The only other classic Doctor Who serial I've ever watched is the Fifth Doctor's Cybermen story, where what's-his-face dies at the end of it. So I don't think there was any prisoner taking in that episode. Maybe the writing had evolved a bit by then. I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, the Ark ship has finally reached the planet Refusus, which has been its destination for all of these years, and so they come up with a clever plan to send the Doctor and Dodo and some rando human down with a monoid to investigate the planet's surface and see if it's habitable. And by the way, can you imagine if they had travelled for all these thousands of years and it wasn't? That would have been a bummer. Anyway, they soon come to learn that this planet is inhabited by people who do not have corporeal form, which is kind of hinted to us before the reveal. My favourite hint is that as they talk about who the inhabitants of this world could be, and they walk away, the camera then zooms in on a bush where a face is made out of string. The VFX budget is just... I don't know how they splashed so much money on this show. We realise that the Monoids have no intention of building a friendly relationship with the Refusians, which is a shame, because when we do meet one of them, we learn that they have no need for these homes without their corporeal forms, and therefore they have built this city for the denizens of the Ark, as long as they are peaceful. And then we immediately cut away to a Monoid killing the human because the human realised their plan to kill all the humans. Not one of my better constructed sentences, but we're going with it. In return, as the Monoid reboards the landing pod and decides to make contact with a ship and tell them about the things that are occurring down here, the Refusians blow him up. So I'm interested to see how this conflict resolves itself. Is there any hope for peace? Is there any hope for a agreement between the Monoids and the humans and the Refusians, and a return to a peaceful coexistence between the species? Have the Monoids taken things too far? Is it possible they were maybe justified and in overthrowing the humans and they were mistreated? Probably not. God damn it, I'm trying to think of a right word, but I keep coming up with retribution. Retribution is not the right word. Is there any... not vindication? What is it the Monoids might attain? I'm leaving this in the video because it's painful for me. It's got to be painful for you too. That's how good videos work, right? Redemption! Is there any redemption for the Monoids? Or is this just going to end with, don't worry, we killed all the Monoids, hooray! I mean, they are literally trying to kill all the humans, so I don't know. Let's find out together. Part 4, the final part, the bomb. In this episode, the humans aboard the Ark scramble to find the location of the bomb, while the Doctor and Dodo on the planet's surface are held hostage, shock horror, by the Monoids, whose name I definitely didn't almost forget after having just watched all 4 parts of these back-to-back. Definitely didn't take me 2 months to get through all of this. Nope, not at all. By the way, that's not because this was bad or boring. I just have a really bad attention span. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before. I actually quite enjoyed this 4-parter. At least, as far as classic Doctor Who episodes go. I'm not exactly gonna recommend this for anyone to go and watch who's not already watching through classic Doctor Who. But yes, in this episode, a division forms within the Monoid ranks, between those who want to claim the planet for themselves and destroy all the humans and do so by destroying the Ark, and those who want to at least save the Ark because it contains a bunch of miniaturized versions of not just the humans, but the Monoids. The Monoids start shooting each other, and most of them die, allowing the Doctor and crew to pretty much save the day. I won't lie, it wasn't the twistiest, turniest, most interesting ending I could have foreseen for this story. The highlight of the episode for me was when one of the Monoids died and made this noise. Anyway, another revelation in this episode is that the Refusians, apart from just being invisible, are also able to use their, powers to move the statue out of the airlock, because it's meant to be this great big giant statue that no one's ever going to be able to move, but luckily the Refusians can. But one of the things I liked about that is when he picked up the statue, clearly it cut away to an actual movable, smaller size statue used on I don't even know if they had macro lenses back then, but they tried to make it look like it was the same size statue as the larger one, except it was clearly different proportions and stuff. The charm of Classic Who and its non-existent VFX budget is not lost on me still. Anyway, when a day is saved and all is said and done, the Refusian says to the humans, "There is one thing you must do if you want to live on my planet, and you must make peace with the Monoids." And I'm like, my guy, these guys have just spent their entire lives being enslaved to the Monoids. But the message they were trying to put forth was that the Monoids got that way because of the way the humans treated the Monoids as slaves. But here's the thing, as you will have already heard me discussing, I didn't see that in the first 2 episodes. In fact, in the first 2 episodes, I saw them kind of being checking with the Monoids if, is this okay? They almost seemed fearful of them. It didn't seem like a subservient kind of relationship. But hey, who knows? If I went back and watched it again, maybe I would change my mind on that. I'm not going to. But yeah, it was an okay episode. 3 out of 5, I guess, or okay serial. 7 out of 10. Solid episode, solid ideas. Probably one of the adventures I'll remember. If vaguely, I'll remember it. It'll be in my brain. And yeah, that's going to do it for this thoughts on classic Doctor Who. It's making a return. I'm not going to take another year to get to the next one, honest. Yeah, by the way, before I leave, I'm going to leave you with some bloopers, because I have been slowly losing the ability to form sentences and words, and I think you might find that enjoyable, but that's going to do it for me. After the bloopers will be the outro, so thank you for watching and all that good stuff, and I will see you in whatever I make next. Blooper noise. Firstly, no more Vicky. She fell in love in... Let's have a quick click over here. In The Mythmakers with a dude. I should redo this. Blooper noise. In return, as the Refusian reboards the landing pod and tries to make communication... Did I say Refusian? Blooper noise. The highlight of the episode for me was when one of the Monoids died. Blooper noise.